Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in today's video we'll be doing Packet Tracer 11.5.5 of the Cisco Networking Academy. Okay, so you have your addressing table, your objectives, your backgrounds, and your instructions right down till the end, right down there. And as you can see, completion is at 0%, and I'm going to try to get you to 100% by the end of the video. So let's just get started right onto the instructions. So we're going to start right about here. And on step 1, we configure our customer router. So just click on your customer router, go on your CL tab. Let me just move that for you and top it. And you enable and go into your configuration mode. And the first thing they tell us to do is to set the enable secret password on the customer router to class 123. So enable secret class 123. Then they tell you set the console login password to Cisco 123. So go onto your line console 0. Password is Cisco 123. Log in and exit. Then they tell you to configure a customer router as the host name for the router. So just write host name, customer router. And now they tell you to configure the G00 and G01 interfaces with IP address and subnet mask, and then enable them. And then they tell you to save the running configuration to the startup configuration file. So if you do go up, usually this is where we find our IP addresses and our subnet masks, but in this case it is empty. So what we have to do is we have to calculate it on our own. Now, if you have checked my previous video, I have made a separate video on how to do the calculations and so forth. So in this video, if you are a bit confused, please just refer to the previous video that will show you how to do calculations properly, and then we can do this together. So far, I have made calculations, and this is what the calculations will look like. You have your last octet calculation, your number of subnets, number of hosts, and subnet mask. Then this is the IP address that we were given, network, and then we have our subnet, network address, range usable IPs, and broadcast address. So if you go back to your packet tracer, I'm going to scroll down for you. You'll realize you were given this as a start for our network address. We're given 192.168.0.0 and we're given /24. With that, we're given minimum hosts. We're given 50 hosts and 40 hosts for these LANs. So we're given, here we have 50 hosts and here we have 40 hosts. So again, if you go back into the calculation, I have shown you how to find your number of hosts. So we have 50 hosts to begin with. And in 50 hosts, I told you when looking for your number of hosts, always pick the closest higher number. And the closest higher number to 50 would be 62. And it is also the closest highest number to 40. So we both have 62. 62 hosts will use this, and therefore our subnet mask will be 255.255.255.192. Okay, that will be our subnet mask. So now that we have already concluded that, we can go back into our packet tracer. These are the calculation for the networking address. Remember, we were given 192.168.0.0. So these are the networking addresses we will be using. So if you go back to read the instructions on where to actually use these IP addresses. So scroll down, and here we have assign the first subnet to LAN A. So we'd have LAN A and use the first host address for the customer interface connected to LAN A switch. So again, if you have also picked on my previous videos and we want to know where does G00 and G01 connect, you will see I just told you to click your mouse and put it right on the cable and you'll be able to see. In this case, however, I did realize that you're not given that option. So you'll just go here, up here on options, go on preference, and make sure this thing is on. So it will be off, so just put it on like that, where it says show port labels when mouse over in Logic Workspace. Okay, and so when you click here, you'll see that the G00 of the customer router is connected to LAN A, and the G01 of the customer router is connected to LAN B. Okay, so now we'll go back to our calculations. And remember here on subnets, I just wrote switch 1, switch 2, switch 3. In this case, they call them LAN. So I'm going to switch this switch 1, switch 2, and I'm just going to rename it LAN A and LAN B. Okay, sorry. So we're going to rename whatever we had at switch 1 to LAN A, and switch 2 we're just going to rename LAN B. And basically we just have LAN A and LAN B, so it'll just end there. If we had a different LAN C, that's when we'd switch this switch 3. So go back into your packet tracer. Again, click on the customer router. And I'm going to top that for you. They say assign the first subnet to LAN A. We already found our subnet mask, okay? And then they say use the first host address for the customer interface. So we're going to go to our calculation so that we can find. Remember they said use the first host address. The first host address that is used, all the networking addresses that can be usable, remember, are on the range usable IPs. Okay, and the network addresses that we will be able to use is from 192.168.0.1 up until 192.168.0.62. And why is that? Because we're only changing the last number. You'll see here the first three numbers are exactly the same, but the difference is these. So the first usable will be 192.168.0.1. So because we're using LAN A, let's say int G00, click enter, and your IP address, they said to use the first usable. This is your first usable, and we're using LAN A, remember? So only look at this line. The first usable address was 192.168.0.1, and our subnet mask, remember, since we said we are going to use 62 hosts, our subnet mask will be 255.255.255.192. So we put our subnet mask 255.255.255.0. Click enter and then no shutdown. Now we have to interface gigabit Ethernet 01, and our IP address for that is, I told you to use, Remember our gigabit Ethernet, let me just go back for you. Our gigabit Ethernet 01 on the customer router is connected to LAN B. Okay, so this time we're going to have to use LAN B here, where they say use the first host address for the customer router interface connected to LAN B switch. And that interface will be G01. So we go back into our calculation so that we can find LAN B. And the first usable, again, just look at the range usable IPs. The first usable address for LAN B is 192.168.0.65. So IP address 192.168.0.65, and our subnet mask will be 255.255.255.192, and then you write no shutdown. I don't know why it's overlapping. Let me just fix that for you. Okay, so the problem was that my subnet mask was incorrect. If you see here, I said 255.255.255.0, and the last digit is supposed to be 192. So please just correct that. I'm very sorry, guys. And then we're going to go into our interface gigabit Ethernet 01 and G0/1, and our IP address is 192.168. Okay, so let me just write the IP address. IP address is 192.168.0.65, and make sure to put the correct IP address. I mean subnet mask, sorry, because my subnet mask was incorrect. Okay, sorry, I misspelled. Yeah, my IP address was misspelled, so let me just correct that. IP address is 192.168.0.65, and our subnet mask is 255.255.255.192. Enter. No shutdown. No shutdown. So as you can see, now it is no longer overlapping. Okay, so now we can go back to our packet tracer instructions. So once we have enabled our interfaces, now we just have to save everything. So let me just end this, click enter, and copy, run start, like so. And that's it for our customer router. So now we have to configure our two customer LAN switches. So they say configure the IP addresses on interface VLAN 1 on the two customer LAN switches. Make sure to configure the correct default gateway for each switch. Now, usually this is much better when you use a pen and paper, because then you can write what you wrote where and so forth. So go on your first LAN A, go on your CL tab, and we have to make an interface for our VLAN 1. So enter, enable, go onto your configuration mode, and int VLAN 1. Enter. So the IP address that you will be using for LAN A, they say use the second host address for LAN A switch. Make sure to assign a default gateway for the switch. I'm going to go back into the calculations again. And again, we're dealing with LAN A. Our Our subnet mask, by the way, is still 255.255.255.192. So now that we have our subnet mask out of the way, we go to range usable IPs and we're looking at LAN A. So we need to find an IP address for LAN A, and they said use the second usable address. So our second usable, because we've already used one, now we're going to go to the next number, and if you count, you get 0, 1. The next number will just be 2. That's the follow-up number from your last number. So if, for example, we had 103 here, our second usable will be 104. And if we had 213, our second usable will be 214, and third usable will be so forth and so forth. So our IP address will be the second usable, and since the first usable was 192.168.0.1, our IP address will be, this last digit will change into a 2. So IP address 192.168.0.2, and our subnet mask, we do not change it, so 255.255.255, and what was it again? 192, yes, .192, enter, and then no shutdown. And remember, they did tell us to use they told us to find a default gateway, okay? And our default gateway, we said it will connect with the G01 of the customer router. And if you remember properly, our G01 for the customer router was the first usable IP address in LAN A. So we'll type IP default gateway, sorry, default gateway, and that will be 192.168.0.1. So 192.168.0.1. And there you have it. So go back into your packet tracer and let's see. See, they said use the second host LAN A and make sure to configure the default gateway. Then they say use the last host address for PCA. Make sure to assign a default gateway for the PC. Again, the default gateway for PCA will be at G01 connected to the customer router, because remember, these two have the same default gateway. So you click on PCA and go on your desktop, go onto IP configuration. Let me just top that for you. And they tell you to use the last host address for PCA. So go back to your calculation, and because this PCA was connected to LAN A, again, we're still going to be looking at LAN A, and we're going to be looking at range usable IPs. So they tell you to use the last usable. And when we were looking for the customer router and the default gateway, we used the first and second, which was 1 and 2. The last number changed and it ranged from 1 to 2. Now when we're using the last one, this is your last. So your range basically will go from 1 up until 62. It will not surpass 62. So our last address in this case would be 62. So your IPv4 address will be 192.168.0.62. And your subnet mask, again, this will be 192. Let me just verify that. Yes, 192. And your default gateway will not change. It will be the same default gateway that you used for LAN A. So 192.168.0.1. There you have it. So go back into your packet tracer. Okay. Then now we have to deal with LAN B, and they tell you use the first host address for the customer router. So go on LAN B CL tab again. So click on len B. I'm just going to type that for you. And you're on your CL tab. So click enter, enable, go into your configuration mode. So config C. And now we can start assigning our addresses. And they tell you use the first. We already used the first on the customer router. Now we have to use the second host address for len B. So if you go back into your calculation, we're focusing on len B, so we're using the second usable. The first usable was 65, which means the second usable will be 66. So int VLAN1 IP address is 192.168.0.65, and do not forget your subnet mask. So subnet mask is 255.255.192. No shutdown, and we should not forget, sorry, that is misspelled, no shutdown, and we should not forget our IP default gateway. IP default gateway, and our IP default gateway was the first usable for len B, remember, which would be 65. So 192.168.0.65. There you have it. So we go back and now we have to deal with PCB. Okay, so PCB, click on it, and remember PCB and len B will have the same default gateway. So go on desktop IP configuration, and they say use the last host. For PCB, make sure to assign a default gateway for the PC. So go onto your calculation. Sorry, I forgot to top that for you. Click on PCB. Let me top it for you. Go back into your calculation, and they tell you use the last usable address, and our last usable again will be the end of the range, which will be 126. So 192.168.0.126, and our subnet mask, remember, it ends with 192. And our default gateway, remember our default gateway, we're using the first usable. So our default gateway will be 192.168.0.65, like so. Go back to your packet tracer. Okay, and there you have it. So now our completion is at 95%, which means something is wrong somewhere. We don't. Oh, did I put a default gateway for this? Oh yeah, I did put a default gateway. So again, because we're not sure what is missing, we'll go on check results, assessment items, and scroll down to see where we have went wrong. So you'll see here on len B, our IP address is incorrect for int VLAN1. So we have to go back to len B and put in the correct IP address. So click on len B, and we have to have, so let me just scroll up a bit for you. And when we're dealing with len B, we're supposed to use the second address. So did we use the second address? Go to your calculation. We're dealing with len B. No, we did not. See, instead of 66, it's 65. I'm so sorry, guys. So go back to in VLAN 1 and IP address is 192.168.0.66, not 65 because we have to use the second usable IP. So, and our subnet mask, let's not forget our subnet mask, 255.255.255.192 and no shutdown. Okay, right, no shutdown. And go back to your packet tracer. And you can see completion is at 100%. This activity was a little bit more complicated than the others, but with time you will get better, you will try to understand more, and as we continue, understanding will get better. You can go back and forth with the videos for better understanding, but from me, I've gotten you to a completion of 100%. I'll see you in my next video. Good, thanks for watching. Good day and God bless.